Hi everyone, welcome back. Rudy Carlos here from Catholic Drive Time, and welcome to this week's Memory Hole news segment, where we recall from memory the top 5 news stories that will certainly get memory holed. Now, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, that means the stories that will be forgotten in our super fast news cycle. But before I get into that, let's get through some housekeeping. If you like this content, and be honest, you know that you do, please click that like button below. Drop a comment in the com box. We love hearing your feedback on these stories or the segment in general, and make sure to subscribe to Catholic Drive Time. We are pretty sure that, we're shadow banned on here, so we're pretty sure about that. And that's because we're a little bit too red-blooded for YouTube. So the best way to circumvent censorship is for you to share this video with a friend. All right, now let's get right into it. Here are your 5 headlines that you should know about this week. And again, these are in no particular order. Here's the headline from BREITBART, and the headline goes, "Oil producers try Re-Fracs to get more product out of established wells." U.S. shale oil producers are working to increase oil output despite the left's antagonism to increasing domestic production. This strategy will allow producers to use the high cost of crude to support operations without making major adjustments in new wells and refineries, while weighing future uncertainties. Now, producers say the benefit of this technique is that it doesn't require additional permits or renegotiations with landowners. And they say that considering inflation, supply chain issues, and rising wages, now is a great time for operators to start looking at wells to refrac opportunities. Matt Johnson, CEO of energy consultancy Primary Vision Network, said. This is pretty interesting. Funny story, I ran into an opposing theory. You know, they call these fuels fossil fuels, right? And if you remember, maybe in elementary school, you probably learned about this, that the theory is, this is a leading theory, that all of the oil that we see underground, in pockets of the rock formations, that actually came from plants and animals that have been broken down, and they've created petroleum, and that's what's considered crude oil. Well, I ran into this opposing theory that says that actually it's methane that's being polymerized inside of the Earth's crust, and it becomes oil. And so what that entails is that essentially this is a renewable resource. So I'd be curious to see what happens over time. Maybe you know about this story a little bit more. I'm here in Houston, so there's a lot of people who work in oil, but I've been poking around trying to see what the shale oil producers say. Do they go back to these different wells? Do they find that they're refilled? Who knows? I think this is a topic that we're going to keep exploring. We're going to try and get a guest onto the show to talk about this in general, to talk about this theory, because I think it would be a really fascinating topic to discuss, don't you think? I mean, it would completely overturn all of this this talk about oil being a non-renewable resource. So it'd be interesting to get that opinion on the show. We did have an opposing opinion this week where we talked about the actual age of the Earth. We had a young Earth creationist on. So, these topics, they may sound crazy at first, but at the very least, we should have a conversation about that. So I thought you'd find that one interesting. Here's headline number 2, and it's sort of related to the first story. This one is from Reuters, and the headline goes, "EU countries reach deal on climate laws after late-night talks." And the story goes that the EU countries clinched deals on proposed laws to combat so-called climate change on Wednesday, backing a 2035 phase-out of new fossil fuel car sales and a multi-billion euro fund to shield poorer citizens from CO2 costs. The deal makes it likely that the proposal will become EU law. The ministers' agreements will form their position in upcoming negotiations with the EU Parliament on the final laws. Parliament has already backed the 2035 car target. Now, this reminds me of another thing that happened a long time ago. I don't know if people actually remember this, but this is from Wikipedia, and it was a program that was created by then President Barack Obama to have people trade in their old cars if it got under a certain mile per gallon target. It was considered a junker. And essentially what they were doing is they were purchasing all of these cars and taking them off the market. Supposedly there was plans to have the people who bought the car to pay you out. And I think people were making anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 for their cars, but they were taking the cars out, and part of the program, in order to make sure that there wasn't fraud or that the people were reselling the car, they would put some sort of chemical into the engine and it would seize the engine. Then they were not able to sell the chassis of the car, for example. But this is from Wikipedia. Let's take a look at it here. This was the car allowance rebate system. And the car allowance rebate system, colloquially known as cash for clunkers, so it wasn't junkers, it was clunkers, was a $3 billion U.S. federal scrappage program intended to provide economic incentives to U.S. residents to purchase a new, more fuel-efficient vehicle when trading in a less fuel-efficient vehicle. The program was promoted as a post-recession stimulus program to boost auto sales while putting more fuel-efficient vehicles on the roadways. I suppose this would be a conspiracy theory to think about now, but not really. You know, with conspiracy theories these days, you just consider them a conspiracy theory one day, and then the next day it turns out to be real. And I think this was the first time that this was tested out in order to see if people were willing to trade in their cars, willing to change some aspect of their life to buy into this climate change agenda. And so we saw a lot of people buying these new cars. It's a good thing to have a lot more MPG. Don't get me wrong. I think that if we can improve vehicles, it's a fantastic idea. But what this is proposing, and what the United States is proposing now, is that by 2035 there's going to be some pretty severe restrictions on emissions on cars. Now, if you're in any of the states like California, here in Harris County in Texas, certain parts of the country have some pretty significant emissions restrictions on the vehicles already. I know in California you have to take your car in every 2 years to make sure that it's passing its emissions check, making sure that the catalytic converter is still working, that you know, the EGR system, if you have that on your car, is recycling the expelled emissions and then, you know, recombusting them again, and that's supposed to reduce the emissions. So there's already a lot of stuff out there that is helping with the environmental impact of the vehicles. But it seems now that we're moving in the direction where we're going to have to replace all of our vehicles with electric vehicles is what I mean to say. And really, what we're doing is we're trading one thing that is creating an environmental impact. I mean, there's no question about it. But we're trading it for something that's supposed to be a lot better. However, on the other hand, most of the energy that is fueling these electric vehicles is backed by coal and non-renewable sources. So really, we're just kind of getting manipulated into buying a particular type of vehicle or participating in some sort of environmental program where really we're not winning. It's not really all that beneficial to the environment, and it's certainly not beneficial to us. Now, imagine yourself having your children be inside of a classroom and a gunman coming in and murdering all of the kids in the classroom. It's such a crazy thing to imagine. It's such a crazy thing to even consider, but it happens these days. That there are a lot of people who are unhinged and they go into schools and they murder children. Now, imagine the situation now as a parent from the outside perspective of being at the scene and not having anyone go into the school and save your children. Well, this mom, who this story is about, found herself in the same situation. And what she did was she jumped over a barricade and went in and saved her kids. The first time she jumped over the barricade, she was handcuffed. She escaped the handcuffs, jumped over again, and got her kids out of the classroom in Robb Elementary School out in Uvalde. And this story is from The Blaze. This documents the aftermath of this whole story. Obviously, there's a lot of really crazy circumstances to this story. In fact, we keep seeing, this is a developing story, but we see little developments here and there that the accounts that the police officers gave who actually refused to go into the classroom, changes, and they've kind of dug their own grave, so to say, because they don't really have a good reason as to why they didn't go in and save the children. In any case, this story is from The Blaze. The headline goes, "Mom who saved her own kids from Uvalde massacre says she's now being harassed by police." Angeli Rose Gomez said that she had been threatened by police and has faced increased scrutiny after she spoke to the media about how she saved her children. In a media briefing on Sunday with her lawyer, Gomez detailed her experiences during the announcement that she was seeking to file several lawsuits over the massacre and the police response. She says, quote, "The other night we were exercising and we had a cop parked at the corner, like flickering us with his headlights," unquote, Gomez said. She had also previously claimed that a police officer had called her and warned her that she might be in violation of her probation from an arrest decades ago if she kept speaking to the media. But she only began speaking to the media after being reassured by a judge that she would not be in violation of her probation. She said that she had been briefly handcuffed by police who were preventing her from entering the school as the gunman was barricaded into a classroom. When she was released, she hopped a fence to gain entry to the school grounds twice and saved her children. That is incredible, and I just cannot imagine what that was like, those feelings. You know, like I mentioned, I'm a parent, and you bet your ass I would have jumped over that barricade myself too to try and save my children. And now the aftermath is she's being harassed by police. Well, it's not all that surprising, and I hope that she finds justice here. I hope that all of the families find justice here. And if there really was a lot of wrongdoing on the part of the police department, that they face justice as well. Now, here's another article. This one is from the Epoch Times, and the headline goes, "DOJ has VA," which is the Veterans Association Administration, "suspend all benefits of January 6 prisoner." Just when the wife of one incarcerated January 6 prisoner believed things couldn't get any worse, the Department of Veterans Affairs, I got that completely wrong, it's the Department of Veterans Affairs, informed her that they are going to suspend all of her husband's benefits. According to the United States Representative Louis Gohmert, he says, quote, "This is what you have when vindictive leftists get in charge of major parts of the government," unquote. In an unsigned letter from the VA dated June 13th and appearing to originate from the Director Regional Office, Angel and Kenneth Harrelson were notified that the administration received information from the United States Department of Justice that Kenneth had been indicted and charged with seditious conspiracy. Now, according to the 18-page criminal complaint, Kenneth Harrelson was charged with conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, and aiding and abetting destruction of government property, and aiding and abetting entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, tampering with documents or proceedings. And according to the arrest warrant, Kenneth was arrested at his home in Tudesville, Florida on March 10th, 2021. According to the criminal docket, the seditious conspiracy charge was added with several others on January 12th, 2022. Kenneth is currently being held in a correctional treatment facility in Southeast Washington and has been incarcerated without a trial and without being convicted of any crime for over 475 days. Now, the leftists are trying to spin this as this crazy insurrection that happened at the Capitol. There was a riot, that's for certain. There were some people there who had bad intentions, who were destroying property, but there also were pretty bad actors on the other side too. Let's not forget Ashley Babbitt, who was murdered in cold blood just for being inside of the Capitol. That's not how you treat somebody who's not really doing anything to you in the first place. The officer who was behind a closed door was not in danger, but he chose to shoot Ashley Babbitt anyway. And now we have all of these political prisoners who have no case. They haven't been able to present their case at all. They've been held, some of them in solitary confinement for like the majority of the day. and we're just parading them as if they're just political prisoners. There's nothing ever going to happen with them. And that's an obstruction of justice. Now, here's the last story. This one's from the Daily Wire, and it's a pretty interesting story. When I first read it, I thought it was pretty incredible. It's something I hadn't considered before, but well, here's the headline, and you'll understand why this is not something most people consider. This is again from the Daily Wire. Headline goes: "Space is a war-fighting domain," says U.S. Space Force activates new unit within branch. Now, with China and Russia orbiting threats on U.S. space assets and national security, America's sixth and newest branch of the military activated a new unit within the Space Force. Space Delta 18, a moniker given to the unit in honor of the military branch officially becoming the 18th member of the U.S. intelligence community last year, launched during a ceremony last week at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Recent reports show both China and Russia have used anti-satellite capabilities. Earlier this year, a telescope observed a defunct Chinese navigation satellite get pulled out of its normal orbit into a super graveyard drift orbit, which raised concerns about how the Chinese maneuver the satellites closer to others. Meanwhile, Russia has jammed GPS signals throughout its conflict with Ukraine, targeting the United States Navstar system of satellites. Now, this is the aspect I hadn't considered. In any conflicts, intelligence is key. And the conflicts that we find ourselves in these days, modern conflicts, they involve a lot of technology and a lot of intelligence gathering capabilities. Notwithstanding satellites, observation from space, communications, which most of the communications can be attributed to things that are, satellites that are in space, that sort of thing. Now, one thing that I didn't consider is that there's a capacity from different state actors to be able to pull satellites out of the air, or in this case, if China is able to maneuver the drift of a particular satellite, well, that satellite can then go onto a crash course and destroy other infrastructure that we rely on for intelligence. So that's a pretty interesting aspect, a new development to the way that wars are going to be fought. When I was a kid, I thought that by the year 2020, we were going to have flying cars and all kinds of crazy spaceships and contraptions and stuff like that. And so far, I'm pretty disappointed by 2020 and all of the years following that. Now we're 2 years after 2020, and that was a horrendous year. Globally speaking, of course, there were some wonderful things that happened in my life. I got married, for instance, in 2019. So going into 2020, we had our first baby. So it's been fantastic in that regard. But on a global scale, it's been pretty crazy. And I guess as a kid, I thought that we would have all these crazy developments. We'd be in space, that it would be more accessible. But instead, we get this. We get the Space Force being able to carry out military operations from space. So that's a little bit different from what I expected. But in any case, it's an interesting story. And that wraps up our top 5 stories that you should keep in mind, that you should not forget. Don't let them memory hole you with the super fast news cycle. Just keep those in mind. They have some pretty interesting implications that will develop over time. So thank you very much. I appreciate you getting this far in the video. If you really enjoyed the video, again, consider clicking the like button down there, subscribing to Catholic Drive Time, and if you'd like to watch us live, we do stream live on the Guadalupe Radio Network. If you listen to us via the radio through our digital app, which you can download on any app store, on the Google and Apple App Store. You can search for Guadalupe Radio Network, and you can download our app. You can get in contact with your local general manager for your local station. You can listen to the podcast version of our show. You can tune in live, as I said. And we stream live Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Thank you very much. This has been Rudy Carlos. This has been the Memory Hole News segment this week. God bless you and Mary keep you. See you next time.